A good evening and warm welcome to everybody here who have joined us on the webinar today. Welcome to Frugal for Growth webinar series. I am Peri Nagamitra and I'm currently working as a growth manager at Frugal. So Frugal is a cloud-based customer engagement and customer loyalty platform. We help businesses enable customer centricity through various retention strategies and loyalty strategies, hence building the growth and trajectory of the business. Today in the webinar, we are joined with none other than Mr. Rahul Basu. To give a very brief introduction about Mr. Rahul, he has almost 2 decades worth of experience, which is amazingly a lot to say. And his love and how he breathes customer loyalty, customer retention in these years of experience shows by his work in major brands like Payback, Flipkart, Future Group, and now Reliance Industries. A warm welcome to you, Mr. Rahul. Thank you so much for joining us on this webinar.
Thank you, Mitra. Delighted to be here. I would love to see how this progresses, and happy to help. Happy to share my experience. Yes.
Yeah. So a brief about today, how the webinar is going to go ahead. So today I will be talking and I will be asking a lot of questions to Mr. Rahul about what is customer loyalty and the power of data when it comes to customer loyalty. And we will be moving on and trying to understand if deep discounting is the actual future of the brands. If yes or if no, how it's going to look like. And moving on, we'll also know about a little bit of his experience in coalition-based loyalty programs and what is it all about and which brand should implement a program like that. And last but not the least, if any brand is any brand were to implement a loyalty program, how do they indicate it that it's a successful loyalty program, right? So we will start off with the webinar with a couple of interesting facts on how this data works. So if you didn't know, on an average, every human being per second creates about 1.7 MB of data in this year 2020. However, this data is going to increase per day. People will be able to generate anywhere close to 463 exabytes of customer data. Now to put this into perspective, we have byte, we have kilobyte, we have megabyte, gigabyte, terabyte, petabyte, and then exabyte. So now I think you do understand how big is this number, and it's not easy, right? So a fun fact is 95% of the businesses depend on this kind of big data, unstructured data, or even structured data, and they do believe that all this data helps them resolve their major business issues and get to know about their customer in detail. So another fun fact, and the last fun fact is Netflix was able to save or is able to save almost $1 billion per year just because of customer data in their customer retention strategies. So Mr. Vasu, what do you think about all of these numbers? How does it make you feel?
Like I said before, I mean, at the risk of, disclosing how old I am, I've seen data, the definition of data itself change over the decades, right? I mean, in early 2000, when you meant data, you meant basically name and phone number, right? And today that is not the definition of data, right? In early 2000, it was very difficult to get name and phone number, right? Because people didn't want to give, and there were virtually none of the systems available to capture that kind of information. And I have been in boardrooms where heated debates have happened between operations and marketing in terms of what kind of data has to be shared and how is it possible to be shared, right, within the same organization, right? Okay. And cut to now where the definition of data is not contact information. That's a given. I mean, you have so many avenues. You have your website, you have your app, you have social media, that it's a given, right? You have multiple channels of reaching out to your customer. Today, the definition of data is how are you having one-to-one conversation with each of your clients, right? It was not so in 2000. And that's where I think the foundation of a lot of programs went wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Because they never evolved with the evolution of data, right? Today, we have so much data that, as a thumb rule, as somebody who heads analytics, I call it the need to know, uh, basis, right? So there are data points that we share, and there are data points that we don't share, based on what we have established as need to know basis, right? Because there are functions which need to know certain things. There are functions which need to know a lot more things, and there are functions which need a 1,000 feet view. There are functions that need a 30,000 feet view, right? So we have decimated data into various levels, and like I said, sounds very offensive, but we call it the need to know,
Yeah.
the need to know structure, right?
I think it kind of makes sense, because if any brand, if you were to give a lot of data, and if they were to see the amount of data that they currently have, if they were given beyond the need to know data, I mean, they're done, they're lost then and there. They wouldn't be able to make meaning out of that existing data. Rather,
Right.
you need somebody to help you out with it again. So,
Right. So that has been the philosophy over the years, and I think it makes sense. It makes sense when you basically have to structure your data as to today. Absolutely, today it is essential that you have to make a decision as a data owner, right? Who's the data owner today? As an analytics person, I'm the data owner. If somebody in my position, if you are in the team of analytics, if you are presenting to your management, you will have to understand and establish very quickly this thumb rule, which is need to know, right? Because uh, at some level, we as a country has not been mature enough to handle data
yeah.
or to understand data, right? So yeah, so
Yeah. So in that case, in that context, if we take big data or any customer data to build a successful loyalty program, or even
hmm,
build customer loyalty around any brand,
hmm.
the first question we ask is, how do we make meaning of it, and how do we build loyalty? How does it
Okay,
help?
so this is another interesting snippet, right? In early 2000, and in I'm sorry, in early 2000, when you started loyalty programs, right? The basic requirement of loyalty programs was that you wanted data,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then again, let's go back to how I defined data earlier, right? It was name and contact number,
Yes.
right? So most of the loyalty programs that were designed in that era, right, were to capture name and phone number in lieu of giving you something of value,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they gave you a carrot for you to divulge your name and phone number. What has happened? The data has evolved. The definition of data has evolved. You didn't, right? The program didn't. Even today, they are saying, so within my current profile, even my earlier profile, there were businesses that used to come to me and say, we want a loyalty program.
Yes.
I'm like, why? And because we want customer data. I said, you have it. You already have it. You have it on your website. You have it on your app. You have it on your checkout. You have it on your pause. You have the data. Why would you need a loyalty program? So, and I have been guilty of the same thing. I mean, I'm not saying I'm holier than thou, right? I mean, I have been guilty of the same thing. I mean, decades ago, if you would have asked me, let's build a loyalty program, I would have said yes, because we need customer data. The challenges were such that we didn't get customer data. Today, I mean, as a youngster, you would not even believe that it was possible. But uh, today, everything is real time. You're making a payment on UPI is real time, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And whichever UPI you use, whether it is Amazon or anybody else, right, is processing that data real time, right? I have worked in a process or a loyalty program where the transactional data used to come to me after 3 days, right? Because that was the process.
Yeah.
Right? That was the system that was available. So the batch used to run every 3 months, every 3 days, and I used to get the data end of 3 days, which meant I couldn't do a lot of stuff with the customer that I
On an
could do
immediate
today.
basis. Yeah, yeah.
Right? That I could do today. And those were the times when we used to read about Walmart doing real-time couponing, and we used to wonder how, right? How does Walmart do real-time couponing? Right? And why can't we do it? And we used to find ways to work around that solution, right? But today it's a wide game. You don't need a loyalty program for customer data. You need a loyalty program to fulfill the objective you have. Right? What is your objective? What is it that you want to achieve? Right? What will the loyalty program serve? Right? Are you saying that my cost of acquisition is high and hence I want to have a retainer program? Then it is not a loyalty program. It's a retainer program.
Yeah.
Right? Are you saying that, I want more people to not shop with others and stay with me? Then you will have to look at what has been your strategy for sales. Are you a deep discounting kind of a guy? Then that's not possible.
Yeah.
Then that's not possible, right? Flipkart has tried thrice. Amazon has been successful because of the whole Prime thing, right? Of the gamut of offers that they have, right? They have plugged in multiple benefits into one program, right? Which is where we get to, right? When I say that your loyalty program should make sense outside your ecosystem.
So, but if I had to ask you this question, I am a small scale business owner. I have about 1,000 of customer data currently that I hold. And I want these people to come back to me and build a relationship with me so that they don't go to my competitors on my left or my right. And here I am, I have this data. I don't know how to proceed forward. So in that case, that still mere name, phone number, and email address would build a foundation. In your opinion, how can we build that strong foundation with this existing small bunch of data and build meaning on top of it?
So see, there are only 2 or 3 models that work, right? In a B2C environment, right? I mean, either you have, I strongly believe there are only 2.
Yeah.
It is what is it that your customers associate you with, right? So you can either have a transactional loyalty, wherein, I know that whatever I want to buy, I'd get it cheap there, right? I don't know about your city, but Bombay has multiple such pockets, right? Where people know that I'll get stuff for cheap.
Yeah, for us in Hyderabad, I think we do have certain areas known for a specific product. You get the best of the best prices there.
Yeah, so you might go there to buy for your college reunion, but not for your brother's wedding.
Yeah.
You understand? So then that relationship is very transactional, right? You know that if it's 60% off on Flipkart, or it's 70% off in Amazon. So then you compare, 70% in Amazon, I'm going to Amazon, right? Yeah. So that's a very transactional relationship. Unfortunately, in India, there are very few examples of emotional loyalty. And I see it only with cricketing clubs or increasingly by political views now. They have emotional loyalty, right? I mean, they just believe in one line of thought, right? So, but it is possible, right? Shoppers Stop succeeded in doing that years ago, and they maintained it for years, right? They had an emotional connect with their customer. Jet Airways did that, right? People actually paid a premium to travel Jet Airways, right? If you ask me, I'm more of a Kingfisher guy than Jet Airways. I loved Kingfisher. I loved the whole concept of Kingfisher, right? Kingfisher was a league ahead of every airline that existed in India, right? They just brought luxury into an aircraft, right? So I didn't mind paying 3x or 4x, right? But there was an emotional connect. So I am saying is, coming back to your question, right? Either you will have to have your core offering. So Today, if you have to buy a medical device, you will go to a trusted name. You will not go to a site which gives it at a discount,
Yeah.
right? Right. So either your core offering is unique, wherein customers build that emotional loyalty with you, or the way you serve your customer is unique, right? So everybody remembers their experience that they have at, say, a Central, or say a H&M, or say a premium apparel brand, right? So if you walk into a Jimmy Choo, the kind of experience that they give you, right? Jimmy Choo is different. Whether you're there to buy or not is secondary, right? The way you enter the store, and you can feel the difference in, the service, right? And then you feel nice about being there. Now consider that to walking into a DMart, right?
I immediately switched the feeling within around myself.
Yes. So as a brand, number one, you will have to understand who is my customer, what is the kind of expectation that the customer has, and what is it that I can build that they can come back here.
Okay, I think that's a very good thought that you have suggested. For brands like brick and mortar, right? Now that they're slowly moving into an online kind of a business that they're dealing with, and they slowly, if they're launching their loyalty program, how do you think understanding the customers' every move on their loyalty program would help a brand serve better to the customer?
See, I have very strong views on brick and mortar, right? Brick and mortar, I think Flipkart launched in 2007. Yeah, 2007, right? And quickly went on to become the rocket ship, right? I mean, if one sector that lost out in riding that wave, it is brick and mortar, right? They had so much existing data that they didn't know what to do with, right? And they didn't want to do it, right? I mean, they always had this feeling saying, e-commerce will not work, people want to touch and feel, people will want to come to the store. And today, due to the pandemic, most of them are forced to walk that line, right? So today, every brick and mortar has a loyalty program. Okay, yes. Name me one brick and mortar store that doesn't. Everybody has a loyalty program. Yes, they are successful or not successful at a very different level, right? But today, I'm saying if you are a brick and mortar chain that has launched today, you're a startup and you're starting today, you will have to go back to the drawing board and understand the same two things that I said. Who's my customer and what is it that I'm offering, right? Yeah. The days of sending mass emails, mass SMSs to lakhs and lakhs of people and hoping that few thousands walk in are done.
Yeah. So which gets me to this point of customer invasion, customer data invasion, or their privacy invasion. I think every brand has this notion of, if I just send them an out of the blue message that says, hey, you get 50% off, or you get like a free some kind of product. Is it enough though? Like, again, I think we go back to that point and say, if you want only sales, or is it, if it's just transactional based, it works. But then, in your opinion, what does that impact this kind of invasive loyalty has, or invasive practices have in the future loyalty for a brand? Short-term gains, the gains that are always there, but in long term, what do you think might be the case with a brand like this?
Okay, so let me tell you an example. So I was talking to one of the brands, and they said, sir, we do a lot of personalization. I said, okay. And what kind of personalization do you do? They said, we never send an SMS which says, dear customer. Okay. We always name the customer. And I said, and that's personalization. I said, yeah. What about the offering? They said, whatever we decide, we send. Right. So now, cut to a campaign that we did, I think 6 years back. Right. We did an anniversary campaign for a brand. I will not name the brand. Wherein, as Mitra, you received an email or an SMS which said, hi Mitra, we first met 5 years back. The first time you came in, you bought X. Over the years, you have come 16 times and you have bought XXXXX. We have valued this relationship, and since we are completing 25 years, we offer you Y. Just think about this, right? And I always say this, right? Know your customer and let your customer know that you know him or her, right? So when the customer, as a customer, when I read that SMS or an email, I know that, I don't even remember going there 16 times, but the brand knows that I've come 16 times. They know what I've bought every time I came in. They know what my preferences are. So we broke it down to the level wherein we said, you like Levi's stone washed, low waist, slim fit jeans, and hence your offer is on the same product.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? So that's personalization, right? If you send people communication, everybody wants to know, right? India, fortunately, is a country that everybody is curious. Everybody wants to know, but everybody wants to know what they want to know, right? Nobody wants to know generic information. Oh, we are having end of season sale. Fine. What is in it for me? Everybody is having end of season sale, right? I mean, it's not rocket science. You have not devised it.
Yeah. I think in that aspect, one thing that I did notice in a couple of like documentaries that we watched or general articles that we read, that by constantly saying end of sale, end of season sale by many brands at one time, we lose that simulation or that stimulation that a brand creates for a customer, because you're not trying to grab his attention, but rather you're saying we have sale, you can pick if you want to. But if it is a brand that says, we know it's the end of the season sale, we know you have like a party or like an upcoming wedding if need be. So why don't you drop in? We will give you a personal assistant. So somebody who might be talking to me like this, I would be interested because they're giving me that kind of an attention and they value my presence in the store versus just my money, probably, right?
Yeah. So, mostly in apparel retail, right? You walk into sale after sale after sale after sale.
Yeah.
So you have spring summer launch, and then you have end of season sale. Then you have, a monsoon, and then you have festive. So you're walking into one festival into another. And you will have to quickly realize that every other brand is doing the same, right? Like you said, personal shopper, right? So let me cite you an example. In one of the other brands, we realized that, the footfalls were dropping in Bombay. And when we did the survey, we realized that there is metro construction, right? And metro construction, due to metro construction, most of the stores were on the wrong side of the road, which meant if the customer has to come to a store, they have to take a detour of say 2-3 kilometers, right? So we said fine. Now we went to all these cab aggregators. We signed a deal, and we perpetuated this deal saying, if you want to come to our store, it is 50 rupees, right? And if you which is adjusted against your bill, right? So you're coming in for free. And then if you want to go back to your house, tell the cashier and he'll book a cab for you, right? We did it with, and this is for a grocery brand, right? So we did it with a cab aggregator, and we did this campaign between 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Right? Because that's when a homemaker is free of her domestic responsibilities and would want to go out and shop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And that campaign worked. I mean, it worked tremendously. From the initial promise the cab aggregator made us was, we will give you 6 or 7 cabs to wait at your parking. It went on to where the cab aggregator was talking to us about creating a hub around our stores, right? So it works. So you will have to understand, each communication has to identify a gap. What is the gap? Right? Now in retail, I don't know if you know, but in retail, they say new city, new store, and new city plus store, right? So which means the city has already had a format like yours, or this is a new city which doesn't know about your format. And then you have saturated catchments.
Yes.
For example, if you have had a store in Colaba for, nobody has a store in Colaba, by the way, because people in Colaba don't shop; they send shoppers to shop, right? So nobody has a store in Colaba. Nobody has a store in South Bombay. So coming to the lowlies like us in North Bombay, so if you have a catchment where you have had a store, a catchment is defined roughly around 5 kilometers around the store, right? So if you have a catchment where you have existed for 10 years, that means you have saturated your catchment, which means no new people are coming into your store. You are stuck with people who are already your customers, right? And in case competition has not happened, then you are at a better stage. But still, how do you do communication there? Because people already know you. People know what you are offering. People know what is there. People know what Wednesday Bazaar is. People know what end of season sale is. People know everything that you do, right? Then you actually break down your customers into various sub-cycles, right? Then you decide, you look at that store's customer and benchmark it into other stores, right? How much is the customer spending here versus how much is the customer spending at other store, right? How many times is the customer coming here? In retail, in fashion, now it has changed. Fashion now thinks, if you don't come to me twice in 3 months, you're lost, right? Grocery, it is 45 days. If you don't come to me to buy groceries for 45 days, we consider you lost, right? So that is how it is working today. But you then break down into what is he buying? Is he buying groceries worth 2,000? Then what is the city average? If the city average is 3,000, which means he's not buying enough.
Yeah.
Then you work on that. Then your communication should focus on that.
So I think the objective for the loyalty or the retention also changes. For somebody who is spending only 2,000, your goal is to increase their average order value or average bill value. I mean, that becomes like a different objectives that a brand has to achieve, right?
Very interesting, right? Let me tell you a very interesting aspect of this whole thing, right? Now, it depends from industry to industry, right? What I cited as an example runs true for a grocery brand or an apparel brand. Let's think about an industry that nobody in India has even explored, right? Let's talk about performing arts, right? Let's talk about performing arts. Now, if you say have the Met here or the Shed here in Bombay, I might go watch the Lion King musical. I would pay 50,000 rupees for an average seat, right? Average seat for a Lion King musical in Met or Shed would be around 50,000 rupees. A good seat would be run up to around 2 lakhs, right? So I go to Shed and I watch Lion King, right? And so I am a platinum customer. I'm a very high value customer, right? And then, I come to the Shed every weekend to watch the Garage Singers and I pay 500 rupees.
Yeah.
But I come every weekend. I come Saturday and Sunday to listen to Garage Singers and I come every weekend. Then what am I? In my eyes, both of them are platinum customers.
Yeah, I think based on the business, it keeps changing. Like
it keeps changing. So you will have, like I said in the first statement, right? You will have to understand what my business is, who my customers are, and what my expectation is.
Awesome. So I think we will move on to this very controversial subject, which I think every Indian will have a problem with, is discounting. So personally, for example, before the webinar even started, like I said, I got a ad for one of the clothing brands, crazy prices, immediately downloaded the app, bought few clothes. Now then it comes to realize, and it's so in sync with the topic, deep discounting in India was started with one of the incumbent brands like Amazon, right? And even, for example, Flipkart. So what I have noticed is many other brands who came after these two major brands in India, they kind of suffer to give the customer the right price, and they kind of crib about the fact that we don't know our brands are really great. If the customer could see the value in it, we don't want to give these kind of discounts. It's killing our brand, but we have to because the incumbents are. So, in your opinion, what do you think discounting is? Is it a good thing or a bad thing?
Okay, so see, Indians always love discounts, right?
Yeah.
Right from those, housewives in old Delhi to buying silk saris on Brigade Road in Bangalore. Everybody loves discounts, right?
Yeah.
We as a civilization love discounts, right? We love, that extra dhania mirchi that comes with our, sabji buying. So keeping that apart, right? Disruptions in market, right, has been caused periodically to change customer behavior. And I take offense to the part that you named Amazon first and Flipkart later, because Amazon came into India first, right?
Yeah.
Like Amazon just followed.
Yeah, exactly.
Right or not. Uh, so when Flipkart started, right, and when Flipkart started, they wanted to create a disruption. They chose a category which was books, right?
Yes.
Not everybody read books in India. I mean, count out on your fingers how many in India have read Kafka, right? Very few,
Very few. Yeah.
right? Very few. But they came in the era of Chetan Bhagat, right? Chetan Bhagat, I mean, he did journalized reading. He brought reading to the masses.
Yeah.
I am nobody to comment on the content, but I'm saying he brought in reading to the masses. He got masses reading, right? And Flipkart got into that space and they started selling books. They were changing customer behavior.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know Old Bangalore, but I'm a huge fan of Old Bangalore, right? Bangalore has this beautiful bookstores, which
Yeah.
existed for generations, right?
Agreed.
Generations, where you could walk in. There was a Gangaram on MG Road, if my age is not failing me. And
Even
there used
Church
to be,
Street has Blossoms as one of the bookstores, which is amazing collections, like a tower of books that are endless.
yes, yes. So Gangaram's was bang on MG Road. You could walk in, and it was 3 floors of pure bliss, right? You could smell the book. You could touch and feel it, right? And Flipkart changed all that, right? And how did they do it, right? Now you will have to understand. I will give you the emotional part of it, and I'll give you the practical part of it. The emotional part of it was, as a book lover, you realized, if I were living in, say, Indranagar, and I have to go to MG Road in Bangalore, it was I managing traffic,
Yep.
finding parking in MG Road, and then walking into Gangarams and booking that book. And that book might be worth some 200 rupees, right? So then I used to think, is it worth it? Flipkart got into that space. It gave me, books at my home. Now the practical purposes of it, like how did it happen, right? Why did Flipkart decide to sell books? Because books is a category which has the highest amount of margins, right? And it is not perishable, right? So now this culminated into this whole era of, they started adding categories, and then they realized, why would somebody buy electronics from me? Why would somebody buy clothing from me? Why would somebody buy anything else from me? Because India as a culture, I don't know if you have noticed, my mother, when she walks into a garment store, right, the first thing she does is she sits. The first thing she does is she sits and she starts looking at the farthest corner and then comes to the closest one. That's a consumer. For years, I have believed that women should have a separate consumer behavior, book written about their shopping behavior. It's very different in India, right? And you have to change that customer behavior. Now, as a girl, as a young girl, I mean, when I was young, and girls around me wanted to go out to a mall. They wanted to check out different stores. They wanted to try out different dresses before they could choose one, right? Today, why have they shifted to looking at it on their mobile screen? So you wanted to transform the way customers shopped. Easiest way of doing that was to deep discount.
Yeah.
Right? Because your customer realized that if I walk into the store, there is a cost of getting to the store, there is time involved, and plus I'm not getting the same rate. Right? And then you started riding the tiger. It's like riding the tiger, right? You will never know when to get down. Right? So then you have investor money, you are calling it marketing expense, you're doing this, you're doing that. But end of the day, you have entered a loop which you cannot get out from.
I agree with you on that, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So you have not created value or emotional equity with your customers. And that's the biggest problem, right? If you want loyalty, even without having a program, I'm saying there are companies in India, there are businesses in India, they don't need a loyalty program. Only if they could work on their emotional equity, it would, it would be a pseudo loyalty program that would work in the back end.
Would it take time though, in your opinion, a loyalty program which is highly relational versus a transaction? It would take time, but I think, like we said, every business wants to earn quick as much as they can so that they can get the best of the best investment. So what do you say? Like for a brand, should they wait because the patience is zero? Like in the sense, the gains they want it sooner. So what do we do with that?
How long do you think would have, so we never had retail stores in India. I mean, you're too young to realize, but organized retail didn't exist in India, right? Somebody, one wise man from Calcutta started Big Bazaar. Okay, and that's how organized retail started in India. People never knew what organized retail was, right? People were used to going to their family shops and shopping and paying up whatever, and they were happy about the fact that the shopkeeper knew 3 generations of their family.
Yeah.
Right? That was the only giveaway, right? Shoppers Stop started the first loyalty program in India, debatably, but yes, they at least started the first successful loyalty program in India, right? And so you will have to understand it takes time for your brand to establish yourself, right? Now, end of the day, I strongly believe whatever money you spend with an agency to basically do the placement of your brand, end of the day, it's how the customer looks at you, right? If the customer looks at you as somebody who he could trust, who he could, he knows that the brand will offer me something that is reliable, then, why don't you think we have multiple apps that offer passport seva? It's an area, right? I mean, you could make money. You could do a startup in passport seva and make money.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But the customer won't trust you ever. The customer will trust the government-run app, though it has one of the worst UIs that an app could have. But then yes, right? Yeah. So the customer is going through that worst UI, riding on trust.
Yeah.
And it's how the customer looks at you. So now what have you formed? What have you established across the market, right? How does the customer look at you? I mean, you can pay millions to agencies to create a brand image of yours. End of the day, it's how the customer associates you.
So in that case, my next question would be, which I'm really curious to know, is in loyalty programs, you don't necessarily have everything to do with discount percentages. So to ensure that you don't give away a lot of discounts, you give away product, let's say a freebie or like a free drink or a free pizza. So would then such kind of a loyalty program can surpass how deep discounts can be looked at and like coax it with a little bit of finesse in your view?
See, you don't have to. You don't have to give a freebie. Okay, let me cite you an example. Okay, So I loved flying Kingfisher, like I mentioned. You know why? Because if I've taken the window seat and I'm flying, say, Bangalore to Delhi, and the air hostess would come and she would start talking to the aisle guy first, and she will say, "Sir, this is your meal." And then she would talk to the middle seat. She'll say, "Sir, this is your meal." And then she'll say, "Mr. Rahul, glad to have you back. This is your meal."
I I see what happened there. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
She didn't give me anything for free.
She just remembered.
And she didn't remember. It is data, right? When
Yeah.
she boarded the flight, she was told that, 6C is Mr. Rahul is a platinum customer. That's all.
Wow. Hmm.
It doesn't cost you to build an emotional connect with your customer. It doesn't cost at all. I'm of the stronger view that all these freebies, this is not required. If you have sorted out your data, if you know your customer, this is not required. And the customer is not expecting it as well. Let me be very clear, right? The customer is not expecting you to give him freebies or, those are transactional customers. You don't need them,
Yeah.
right? So let me cite you another example. This is about the Shed in London, right? Shed, they give you early access to tickets. What does it cost you? Nothing. But 70% of people who sign up for the Sheds program do it because of early access.
Wow.
Because if Matilda is happening, if Hamilton is playing, people don't get tickets.
So they have the early access, and that's the benefit that they get.
Yes. Right? I will give you a guided tour of the backstage. What does it cost you? I'll give you hands-free shopping. What does it cost you?
Nothing. But I think the kind of importance and the value it sets in the customer's mind is
immense. You don't have, see, my philosophy is simple. You don't have to spend.
Yeah.
Nobody wants freebies. All they want is, you know me, show me that you know me.
No, that's interesting. So I think if that's the case, if we know the customer very well, we know what he does, how much he shops with us. I want to move to the next segment, which is the coalition program. Not everybody knows how a coalition program works, and I think given your decades to more than 2 decades worth of experience, for somebody who doesn't know what a coalition program is, can you summarize it in a nutshell to understand what it is?
Okay, so again, going back to my philosophy where I said your loyalty program should make sense outside your ecosystem, right? The basic fundamental rule of a coalition program is that, right? Wherein you bring in brands which may or may not be complementary to each other under one umbrella, right? You bring in partners who have their own set of customers into one umbrella, wherein they pull in their customers, they pull in their resources, and it becomes a large pie for everybody to have, right? So Payback, as one of the organizations that I worked in, right? It started off as iMint, which was an ICICI program way back in 2004, I guess. It started way back, but 2004 is when Payback stuff did, if I'm not wrong, 2004, 2005.
Yeah.
And it was an ICICI bank program. So ICICI, it's very funny, right? I mean, if you have a salary account, if you have a credit card, and if you have in life insurance policies, you effectively have 3 payback accounts, right? So every relationship you have with ICICI Bank, by default, you have 3 payback account, right?
Yeah.
And then they roped in partners. So basically, bank is giving you points, but where do you spend these points, right? So they very smartly realized that let's not go and sign up one brand where they can buy. Let's sign up, let's create a coalition. So what does an individual need? They need grocery, they need clothing, they need entertainment, they need fuel, they need travel. And hence, if you see the partners of Payback, it is that ecosystem that they have created, right?
Yes.
Now the thumb rules,
Yeah.
right? You do not have competing partners. So you cannot have, say, a Future Group and a Reliance Retail, right? We could have either or, right?
Yeah.
Now, what happens here now, right? So each brand has their own set of customers, and then each, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So I'm saying each brand has their own set of customers, and they're all pooling into a common pie wherein they all get to dip in and pitch. So that's the beauty of coalition.
But I think in the beauty of coalition, there exists some thorns which are not known by many, which is regarding the customer data. So as much as we value customer data in coalition program, if let's say Future Group has large chunk of data because people are spending, they are purchasing with you, sharing of the same data is not quite so literal within the coalition program, although there's very less competition. So how do you deal with data competition and also try to thrive together? Or is it just that you're still competing even though you're not in a competitive environment?
Okay. So let me start by making a statement. In any coalition program, the only partner you feel sorry about is the bank, because they are only spending money. I cannot spend my points at a bank. I cannot pay my life insurance policy. I cannot pay my credit card bills. I cannot do anything with the bank using my points. So you feel sorry about them. Having said that, I'm only taking Payback as an example. They have created something very beautiful, right? They said the data ownership lies at the enrollment source. Okay, which means that if Future Group has enrolled 10,000 customers, those customers are Future Group customers first and Payback customers next, right?
Wow.
Similarly and Payback has no enrollment channel. You cannot log into Payback's website and enroll. You have to enroll with one of their partners, right? So they have kept their hands away. They have said, we have given you a platform, go ahead and enroll, right? If my numbers are correct, when I left Future Group, they had 950 crore rupees worth of points in the market.
Wow.
Okay, so that is the size of the pie you are looking at, right? And now let's look at individual clusters, right? So you have Future Group customers, you have ICICI Bank customers, you have say travel company customers, you have say apparel company customers, and then you as a brand have the freedom to reach out to anybody. When I say freedom to reach out to anybody, it doesn't mean that you have access to data. It means that your communication would be sent to the data owned by the data owner, right? Like I said, if ICICI Bank tomorrow wants to promote a platinum card, a newly launched platinum card to the central base, I'm okay to do it. But then again, I will have to look at the messaging. I will have to look at the messaging, right? What is it that ICICI Bank is saying? If ICICI Bank is saying, take my platinum card and get 10% off at Reliance Retail, I am not going to send that communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So the access control remains. You are the owner of the data that you enroll, which ensures that your skin is in the game. And everybody else is trying to get to the data that the other guy has.
Yeah. So technically, we are still competing in one sense, because the more the enrollment, the better the chances of them surviving in the market.
So there is a very interesting metric in loyalty, especially in a coalition loyalty. It's called earn burn ratio, right? Which means that when you earn, if Mitra today earns from Big Bazaar spends that money to give Mitra the points.
Yes.
Right? And Mitra has the choice to go and redeem it at Make My Trip. Which means the day redemption happens, Payback will send me an invoice and I have to pay. Right? I have to pay. Right? Which means my earn to burn ratio goes negative. that I've only spent money on Mitra, but Mitra every time collects points and spends it at Make My Trip.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And if as a business your earn burn ratio makes sense, then stay back in coalition loyalty.
And I think in that sense, for Future Group, it was a best move in to look at, because I think the number of brands under which Future Group holds, it kind of makes sense, right? Like the customer, wherever he goes, there is a part of Future Group that he can find where he can redeem those points. So technically, you're keeping the customer in your bubble or like a nice ecosystem and making him enjoy your facilities, right?
So see, Future Group was an anchor partner, right? Which meant that right from grocery to apparel to furniture to housing, everything was Future Group, right? And then you had another anchor partner, which was the bank, and another anchor partner, which was fuel, HPCL. Now, if you look at, like I said, it should make sense in the everyday life of the customer. On an everyday basis, what all do you need? You need grocery, you need apparel, you need entertainment, you need furniture, you need clothing.
Yeah.
And Future Group, I think, had the sweetest deal. I mean, in the whole of payback program,
yes,
they were at the best placed, position when it came to payback program, right? I cannot reveal the actual numbers, but let me give you a ballpark, right? The earn to burn ratio at the grocery retail, which is Big Bazaar, was 1 to 200. Which meant that for every 1 rupee that Big Bazaar gave out as points, they got 200 rupees worth of redemption, right?
Yeah.
Right. At the apparel side, it was even higher, right? At Brand Factory, which was a liquidation brand for Future Group. Uh, uh, for every rupee they spent, the earn to burn ratio was 1 rupee to 337, right? So you understand, right? So for every rupee that I'm spending, I'm getting 300, 400 rupees back as redemption, which is money that the customer has earned outside my shop. And he has decided to redeem it with me because he realized, oh, my points are redeemable here.
Yes, yeah. So in that case, I will move on to the last to tie up with this question. Not every brand is in a position to enter into a coalition program. It could be A, they don't fit well, they don't see the kind of returns that they could get out of it, or B, the possibility of the entire collection of data, trying to manage everything. So there are small scale or even the medium enterprises right now. So in your opinion, how can they measure a successful loyalty program?
For me, the only benchmark of a successful loyalty program is redemption. If the customer has redeemed his points, that means that he's engaged.
Yeah.
It's very simple. It's very simple. There are hundreds of points that you have accumulated that you don't even know about, right? Even reading Times of India in the morning on your phone gives you points. Have you realized it?
No.
Go back and check, right?
Yeah.
Using your ICICI Bank card to pay for anything gets you points, right? I have a colleague who, when I told him that his ICICI credit card gave him points, payback points, went back and checked with the bank, and he actually 100% paid for his return ticket to Singapore. They don't realize.
Yeah.
So when the customer has made an effort to remember his loyalty ID, whatever it may be, right? It could be phone number, username, whatever it is, right? If he has made an effort to remember it, and if he has made an effort to redeem his points, that's the first benchmark of a successful loyalty program.
And do they have in any industry average that they would have to look at? Or is it, what kind of a percentage are we looking at the ballpark figure that says this program is successful?
So in India, around 30% redemption rate is considered super high, right? When it comes to e-commerce, it goes as high as 97%.
Wow.
Right? Because there is, you're online and there's somebody who's reminding you while you're transacting. In brick and mortar, you have to recall,
Yes.
or the cashier has to prompt. So there is human intervention. You cannot depend on the cashier to prompt.
Yeah.
Depends on which day of the week it is, how much crowd is there in the store, and there are so many parameters, right? So industry wise, there's a 30% redemption rate is considered huge, right? Which means people are like really engaged, right? In e-commerce, like I said, it's close to 90 to 97%. Flipkart, it was 97%.
Okay. So I think now we have come to the end of the webinar. It was really, really interesting for me to learn so much about loyalty. I think your experience was quite what we needed at this time. Once considering we had almost, wouldn't say completely out of the pandemic, but people are thinking it's the normal right now and they're trying to live with it. And brands are also being more cautious about how to get the customer back without having to jeopardize them in any which way. So we have one of our questions that has just come in. The question that goes, deep discounting usually benefits customers over brands. Brands like Flipkart and Amazon, which got deep discounting into the market, believes in providing customer satisfaction to best prices. Why is the case that they were able to scale, in your opinion, and enjoy high customer retentions month on month?
No, okay. So let me answer that question as somebody who has been at Flipkart, right? Nobody has the data of how much retention has happened, right? Nobody has that data, right? Nobody talks about it, right? You have to understand they were entering a massive market with immense opportunities, right? So they are, if you ask me, they are still in the acquisition phase. 5 years from now is when they would sit back and start talking about retention. They would start talking about repeat. They would start talking about frequency. They would start talking about ticket size. Right now, they're in acquisition phase, right? I mean, my father, who lives in basically tier 5 or 6 city town in India, now orders online, right? Which is a huge thing for me, right? Because I have, see, my generation has seen online. My previous generation, which is my parents, they have not seen online, right? For them to order today is a huge this thing. And the only driver, like I said, if you're transforming customer behavior, the only way, I don't want to talk about it here, but go read how did hoardings happen in Germany. There was no culture of hoardings in Germany. Go back and read. It's a very interesting read, right? How did somebody introduce hoardings in Germany? You're transforming customer behavior. You need a disruptor. The disruptor is deep discounts. Now, the point is, the moment you get into deep discounts, you're riding the tiger. You never know when to get down. And there is no safe way of getting down.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? So hope that answers the question.
I think we can take one final question before we wrap up the webinar. It says big data can be extremely vast, and collecting consumer or customer behavior over time can be exhausting. In your opinion, what are the aspects to look out for while studying customer data and send relevant communications?
Okay. So the first step, like I said before, need to know audit. You have to establish, the first step in establishing your data analytics structure is need to know audit. You have to share data based on how much does each department wants to know. Right? Now, again, depending on your business, right? I mean, like I gave you an example which doesn't exist, right? Performing arts. Nobody has ever thought about it in India, but it does exist abroad. You coming and spending 2 lakh rupees to watch a premium seat, all frills and bells, Lion King musical, and versus you coming and spending 20,000 rupees to buy a Lion King show to watch an average sit, versus you coming to watch garage singers perform every weekend. For me, both the customers are same, right? The same. So the whole philosophy of recency, frequency, and monitoring, is based on this fact that you rank the customer based on that, right? So big data, like you said, there's a lot of data that is available. Now you will have to pick and choose what is your objective Each campaign needs to have an objective. Just because you are having end of season sale, you do not do a campaign. Everybody else is having an end of season sale. Now you want to decide that this is an X brand of kurti that I want to promote, and then you will have to work on your data backwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
First define your objective. Don't get data and then find an objective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of agree on that point, because I think many a times in the past that I worked with a couple of brands or freelancers that we've ever done throughout our journey, the first thing we used to ask our customers or our clients is, what do you want to achieve? Is this one product that you want to go great in terms of that should be a hero product, or should we dial back? Do you want to win customers hard by making them purchase more than thrice? So what are they purchasing? So then we look at the pattern of what is that they're purchasing more frequently. So we go back to the data based on the objective that we want to achieve. Yeah.
Let me cite you a beautiful example, right? In Gujarat, we wanted to increase milk consumption. When I say milk consumption, we meant that we had an in-house brand and we wanted people to buy. Now think about it. In Gujarat, why would you buy anything apart from Amul?
Yeah, that's the first thing that I was thinking, because they are the ones that are dominating the market. Yeah.
So then your objective is what? You have to increase the consumption of your brand. Then you work on the data. We did a campaign which we got multiple awards for. It was called Pani Ke Daam Mein Doodh.
That's a good one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Trust me, we didn't do anything rocket science. All we did was, we said, when you come to buy in milk, you can buy milk at 10 rupees. Wherein half a liter of milk was 24 or something, right? So half a liter packet of milk for 10 rupees. And we will credit 14 rupees worth of points in your loyalty card. Meant you're going to spend that money with me. My money is for a future purchase. I have parked my money. If I were to talk to you in an accounting parlance, which is the most difficult conversation to have between a loyalty manager and the finance guy, is future earnings.
Yeah.
I have given you that money. I have only made an entry in my book, and I'm sure that you will come back to spend that 14 rupees with me. We in a quarter sold 1.2 times of milk sold by Amul in Gujarat. Right? So now you get the point that I'm making. You know, it's about get your objective right and then work on the data, not the other way around. Just because I have data, let's do something is not the right way.
Not the right way. I think I 100% agree on that. So I think it's sad that we have come to the end of the webinar, because I was thoroughly enjoying, so much so that we didn't see 1 hour had conveniently just passed us. So firstly, I would like to thank you so much for agreeing to do a webinar with us. These kind of webinars, our Frugal for Growth series, is all about empowering business owners, market heads, loyalty experts, customer engagement experts, to know more about how can they do it right. And to get to know that from the industry expert is nothing like it. And to be able to get it from you is nothing like it. So thank you so much for participating in this and being a guest speaker for the session.
Thank you, Mitra. I love the platform, and I hope I could add some value.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So before we leave, I thank every single attendee who had participated in the webinar today. So like we said earlier, we are from Frugal, and Frugal is a cloud-based customer loyalty, customer engagement management platform. So we help enable businesses get their customer retention strategies right and increase their business revenue through achieving customer centricity. Thank you so much, Mr. Rahul. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating. Have a great evening.
Thank you.